Okay, let's get started. Welcome
Right.
to the show, everyone, whoever you are. I'm sorry, one of the problems I'm suffering from at the moment is that I returned from Dublin last week to find that my house had been burgled, and amongst things that were taken there was a computer. So I'm only running off one computer, which means I only have Skype open and I can't see Blog TV. So if anyone messages me through Blog TV, I won't see it. But there we are. Ireland was interesting. I had the great pleasure of meeting face to face none other than the Texan Tank himself, and I think we had a pretty damn good weekend. Tell us your thoughts about Ireland, Aaron.
I enjoyed the trip enormously. The wonderful thing about going to this atheist conference was that whenever you go to any large gathering of people, you expect that at some point somebody's going to have some sort of emotional, downside. But there wasn't that. I mean, everybody was very upbeat, very high-spirited, lots of good conversation. I remember on the Saturday night, it didn't seem that anybody even left the hotel. The lounge was full, and well into the wee hours of the morning, there's lively conversations, every table occupied. Everybody was just having a great time. It was fun meeting everybody. In the few instances that I did get out on the town, I enjoyed that immensely too, because of course it's the first time I'd ever been to another country besides, Mexico. It was surprising. We found this really good Indian curry restaurant, a very expensive restaurant, open at 4:30 in the morning and very packed at the same time. We don't usually encounter stuff like that in Texas. It's virtually impossible to get a good plate of good plate of curry anywhere in this state, in fact.
Well, one of the highlights for me, and there were so many, it's difficult to go through them, but one of them, it was almost surreal because I got off the plane at Dublin, and you know how people are holding up cards with your names on and everything? I've never ever had it before, and there was this person holding up a card with my name on. I thought, what on earth's going on? And then Owen's flight came in shortly after that, and PZ Myers had come in on a flight just before Aaron. So I ended up in a car being driven to this hotel with the Texan Tank and PZ Myers, and I'm just thinking, this is a dream. This can't be happening. I think the thing that actually woke me up though was that driver. I think he was driving on the wrong side of the road, and it was a bit frightening, wasn't it, Aaron?
Well, it wasn't frightening that he was driving on the side of the road that I was used to. It was just frightening to see all the other cars in the other lane going the same direction we were, and cars in our lane coming straight at us. That was a little unnerving. But the guy that said that he was driving us around said that he had moved to Germany for a couple of years, got used to driving on the other side of the road, and was trying to reacclimate. I just wish he hadn't waited till we were in the car to do that. But he did spend enough time on the curb to avoid incoming traffic. I was very impressed with him for that.
Yeah, I think it was actually relief when he mounted the curb for the second time, because the car actually stopped and I could get out. Thunder, you've not been on the show for a while. How have you been?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. And, oh, lordy, contact requests came in. Do you want to tell people about your new website?
It's a blog. It's primarily started... Well, there's a few reasons for it. The first is that I'm going to be on the road in about 3 weeks' time. And so this year, rather than actually... Normally when I do these things, I keep a journal and do the odd video on the road. This time I'll actually be doing that online, so it's going to be an online blog of my travels around America. It's also... I'm thinking about trying to make this transition to where the channel can actually pull in a living wage. I mean, we're not talking about getting rich here. We're talking about a living salary. And that really can't be done on YouTube. So a blog gives you more versatility to get advertising and such like. So there's an element of that to it. And we'll see if it's actually possible to make a living wage out of this sort of thing.
Are you able to give people a link?
It's just thunderfoot.org, and it automatically reroutes to the WordPress, which the WordPress is the one who actually registered thunderfoot.org. So just go to thunderfoot.org, it'll take you there. It's also got some interesting stuff on this potassium stuff I've been doing recently, where I've got, as far as I know, the first footage of potassium gas, that when you actually get potassium reacting with water, it's sort of obvious when you see it that there's a purple flame. That purple flame and the white smoke, that's not hydrogen burning. That's not even the excitation of the odd potassium ion in the vapor. That's actually potassium gas burning. And when you actually film it from underneath, you can actually see the potassium gas being evolved off the surface of the drop. And anyone fancy a guess as to what colour potassium gas is? DPR? You?
I would say it didn't have a colour.
Aaron, you fancy a guess? Yeah, some folks have been to the website and seen it.
Sorry, I have a phone call. This is such an amateur show. Do just about yourselves a second.
If you actually go to the blog...
I want to comment also, since we've got like less than 100 viewers, which is kind of outrageous. I have to conclude that it must be because we did a show a week ago, and so now everybody thinks we're going to be on next week. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I wouldn't mind doing a show next week, and then trying to get ourselves back onto the schedule. We'll have to talk to our tech people about it, but so far as I know, we're going to do this show. We're going to do next week too.
Well, that's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, and just so you know, if anyone wants...
I have to say, this show was put together in about 10 minutes. I went and had a 5-minute power nap about 3 hours ago, and it turned into a 3-hour slumber. So I woke up at 10 to 8, which is why I'm looking a little bit shabby. And I also should say that we do have Don. Don has just got back from the Virgin Islands again. But literally just got back. He's just walked in the door. So we're expecting Don Exodus to join us in a few minutes. Now, we've also got the first person who wants to raise an issue, and I think it's coincidental because it's an issue that you were wanting to raise, Aaron. Something about...
Actually, before you move on to that, if anyone wants closure on the anecdote of what colour potassium vapour is, something that a lot of folks on this show seem remarkably uninterested in, I would need closure on that. If potassium vapor has a colour, I would want to know. But anyway, if you want the answer, go to thunderfoot.org.
So you're not going to tell us?
Oh, now you need closure. It's green. Yeah. It's grass green.
Wow. There we go.
Yeah. So
I mean, how about the same again?
How many metallic? What is the colour of a metal vapor? I mean, is that never actually sort of, they're usually also hot that, the black body radiation makes them appear sort of glowing white. But this doesn't. It actually has, it's bright green.
There's only so many times you can say that without it becoming boring. I'm sorry. It's green. Okay, we've got it, it's green. Sorry, Thunder, I'm only joking. Welcome, Don Exodus. Can people see Don?
Hey, guys. How are y'all doing?
Do you want to tell us what you've been up to for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I was down in, I was down in Virgin Islands for a week, and then Tampa for a week, and then back to the Virgin Islands for a little bit over 2 weeks, and just flew in last night. So, was taking the dental boards down there, so I get my license to practice down there, and I passed and everything, so I'm moving down in 2 weeks. So,
is it correct they're renaming them after your visit?
They might have to. I'm not sure. We'll see. Well, but certainly it's not a truthful name.
Prayer. I don't know anything about it, but Aaron, and I think we've got a video. Can I just say a big thank you to Tony Slutface, who's behind the scenes coordinating everything, and I think at some stage in the next few moments he's going to be playing a video for us. But Aaron, do you want to explain what it's all about?
Well, I really wish that we had a whole lot more viewers for this, and I may end up playing this again next week too, because I want to make a big stink out of this. Tony, are you able to run this video?
Economic collapse, injustice, violence,
perversion, division, abuse,
natural disaster, terrorism,
depression, addiction, fear.
Why is this happening now?
Why is this happening to us? To me.
To them. To this nation.
Who is responsible?
What can we do?
I just want my children to be happy.
For my parents to stop fighting.
To get a job when I graduate. To be able to pay my bills.
For my daddy to love me.
There is a crisis in America, and not just one.
It feels like America's knees are buckling.
Maybe that's the point.
We cannot keep going like this.
Someone has to do something. There has to be a response.
I know I have to respond.
We must make a response.
Not so politicians hear us, not so that others listen to us.
We will lift up our cry to Jesus.
Our cry for justice.
For restoration.
For forgiveness.
Mercy.
This is our hope.
This is our response.
Our government leaders have called this nation.
This generation. Me. Us.
To rise up and make a sound that will be heard in heaven.
To make a response to America's crisis.
We will respond with prayer and fasting.
We will respond with humility and repentance.
We will respond with worship and praise.
On August 6th at Reliance Stadium in Houston.
We will gather.
We will join a movement.
And we will make our response.
I will make my response.
I will make my response.
This is happening.
Where will you be?
What will be your response?
What's wrong with that then?
Were you able to hear it?
I was able to hear enough.
Okay, so
the first caller actually specifically wanted to raise this issue, so I'm going to bring him now. Let him hear your observations. If you just remain mute for a moment, then Joel, and then we'll come to you. Sorry, do go on, Aaron.
This is a great example of American politics when the leading favorites of your politicians are the most incapable people in history. I mean, when you talk about Bush and Palin, what do you have to do to compete with that? You have to be able to show that you are even more incompetent than they are. So this is how you do it. You gather a whole bunch of people together, and when you have created a huge financial disaster by refusing to listen to any of your own advisors, then what you can do is you can get in a cowering position, forcibly self-blinded, and then wish that you had an answer, because it is effectively what they're doing. And he's gathering 50,000 people together so that they can wish that they'd elected somebody that was capable of actually doing something. Go ahead and bring your caller in.
Welcome to the show, Joel.
Hi. This was I hadn't seen that video, and that video was absolutely terrifying. Good as balls, seriously. I saw an article about this, so wanted to bring it up, obviously. Turned into a very long discussion on my own Facebook wall with discussing, is it constitutional? Now, that video...
Absolutely not.
Well, it depends if he's using his own money, I suppose. I suspect he's probably running as close to the line as he possibly can whilst remaining just within the legal boundaries of what he can actually do with promoting a religious view. The analogy I used was he's like an annoying kid in the backseat of a car who's putting his hand right next to their sibling's face. But I'm not touching you. But I'm not touching you. You know, that's what it strikes me like. You know, getting as close as possible.
It doesn't.
Unfortunately,
like...
I couldn't actually hear the very much of the audio. I only got a few seconds of it. What's the problem with the Constitution? Who's actually behind it? I didn't even follow that.
Perry, isn't it?
As much as these people want to pretend otherwise, there is a legal separation of church and state in this country, though you can't tell it. What they're doing is they're using a piece of property that is owned by the government, and they're hosting our governor is hosting this event where he's calling other state governors to join him so they can have this massive prayer-a-thon. Where, as I said, they're looking for an answer to everything. Okay, I mean, like the one little girl in the video said she wants her daddy to love her. I mean, this is so everybody's just going in with their random prayer for any fucking thing. So it's impossible to tell exactly when we can say that this event has failed. It's impossible. We don't have a a finished point. We don't have a time when we can say, okay, has it happened yet, and exactly what was supposed to happen.
What's new, Oren? Since when have you ever been able to test religion?
Okay, here's one of the things they're complaining about. I mean, we don't have enough money in this state, even though we have a bigger economy than many international countries. We don't have the money to pay the school teachers because we need the taxes to do that. We don't have them because we've given billion-dollar tax breaks to oil industries here. So we can't figure out what the solution is.
I think one of the things that I think is most interesting with regard to the constitutional issue was he's using his language very carefully. He says at one point, pray to Jesus if you pray to Jesus. And I think that was like an attempt to sort of sound as if he's being, inclusive. Oh, it's a prayer for everyone. But,
right, but
not everybody prays. Not even every religion has prayers.
Yeah, but we've also listened to an interview with the president of the American Family Association, who are actually the ones hosting this event. They are listed with the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group, and in the interview, they said that Jews, neo-pagans, Hindus, Muslims, all these people were not invited because the guy said that Jews and Muslims worship an entirely different God than Christians do. Apparently their God of Abraham was a different God of Abraham. Maybe they have a different Abraham, I don't know.
With respect, guys, I think that maybe the most effective bit to bite on here is one of essentially branding, in that separation of church and state is a loaded statement, in that it assumes that it is all the church of Christianity. However, you relabel that something that contains exactly the same information, the separation of sect and state, and I don't see how you couldn't get Christians arguing that there shouldn't be a separation of the various sects and state, and unless they can actually unify into one church, then I think that would be an effective relabeling.
Okay, it's just that, and I know you don't appreciate this because you don't live here in Texas, Thunder, and Joel, I'm picking up by the accent that you probably don't live here either, do you?
Nope. No.
Okay.
But it is an issue that concerns me.
Yeah, it's just abysmal here. I mean, every piece of news that I've ever heard on our current governor has caused me to wonder if he isn't trying to fuck shit up on purpose. Everything that he's done for, as far as immigration, for the environment, for the education, for name it, for the support that he's given for various hate groups, etc., for the advice that he's rejected from economists and so on. It's an absolute disaster. And so now he's going to recoup this by blaming his failures on his invisible friend, by asking the invisible friend to come up with a solution. Solutions have been given to him, and he reversed them. He ignored them, and he created a problem. And now he's going to hold a big prayer-a-thon so that we can post the blame on Jesus for not coming up with a solution.
Actually, this is not a unique solution, Aaron. It was typically held in the good old days of battle that you would only win if God was on your side. And so if you lost a battle, then clearly, God wasn't pleased with your actions. And so what do you have to do? You have to believe in God harder, right? So he's basically upping the ante. We didn't believe hard enough the first time, so we have to up our belief in God, and this will solve our problems. Now, I agree completely.
Spiritual
it's a spiritual Ponzi scheme, well, not Ponzi, but you know what I mean? It's a false confirmational bias. We believed in God and the right outcome didn't happen. Therefore, if we believe in God twice as much, then we'll get the desired outcome.
It's odd, isn't it, that they have that reaction rather than thinking that maybe we've got the wrong God or maybe there isn't a God.
Yeah, well, see, now this event, let's not forget that this event is being hosted by the government on government land. but it's being put together and orchestrated by a hate group that is specifically Christian, and which has their president has announced that Jews and Muslims are not welcome.
Let's not forget that Rick Perry is using his position as a governor, as a part of the U.S. government, to promote this. So even if it's not using, which it is, government funds, he's still using his position in government to promote a religious agenda.
Right, but if you actually want to plan a successful strategy against this, arguably the best way to do it is if you go for separation of church and state, you will get largely a unified response from everyone who considers themselves Christian. If you say there should be a separation of sect and state, then of course the guy is on his own, in essence. Because
I just got news today that I haven't been able to verify, but because I just got it today, and independently check it out if you will. One of the reasons that the American Family Association is currently boycotting Home Depot is because they tried to force a move against Home Depot to have them stop supporting whatever it was that for like gays and lesbians, if they wanted some donation for their parade or whatever the hell it was, or I don't know what the details are, but the story that I got today was that the reason that the AFA is boycotting Home Depot is because the CEO of Home Depot told the AFA to go fuck themselves. So I suggest everybody go to Home Depot and buy a damn 2x4. I mean, just something.
Can I just say to the people in Blog TV who are watching, unfortunately, I've just been messaged by Don who's saying his computer is overheating and things are going wrong, so I think we might lose Don, which is a shame.
Well, he shouldn't have put... Never mind.
So, I mean, I think if I was actually looking at ways to get some impact out of this, the way that I was bouncing ideas off Aaron earlier, that Zombie Jesus Day has a good ring to it. So that you respond to the National Day of Prayer with Zombie Jesus Day.
I want to do something much more profound than that. I mean,
it's no one taking legal action against it. I mean, what about the ACLU or an organisation like that?
I think it's too new, and there hasn't been a response. My personal response, and I'm open to suggestions on this, I want something to show these people exactly what I've always been asking for. At what point can we say that this venture has failed? Give me some criteria that you're going to achieve, because they're all going to say, oh, it was great to be involved in something, and they think that getting on their knees and wishing upon a star, because that is literally exactly what they're doing, that they think that is going to fix things. And I want to be able to know and to show, just like we did with the end of the world a few weeks ago, exactly when it fails and how it fails, and get somebody to figure out why the fuck it failed.
Unfortunately, Owen, we didn't show that the rapture didn't happen because it was a spiritual rapture which you cannot see with our eyes.
Oh, yes.
We could never, in some regards, we could never win this argument.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same in both cases. Why didn't it happen? Well, it did happen. It was spiritual. I mean, the goalpost has effectively moved.
Sorry, Joel, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. You have to wonder what the uproar and foaming at the mouth that people like Fox News would have if someone had suggested a day of praying towards Mecca, or a day of meditating under a body tree, or chanting mantras. You have to wonder how they would react. I think that was one of the points that I made today to someone that I think finally made them realise what the problem was. That it's.
No, I mean, I think in America I think in America you've got 90% Christian, something like that. The thing is that if that is a cohesive block, then you've got a very uphill PR battle. You've got to figure out a way of, you say separation of church and state, and that's a united block. Right? You actually break it down. I mean, what is this guy? You say that he's, you need to break him off from the Mormons, from the Jehovah's Witnesses, all this sort of lot who sort of get some sort of mutual support off each other.
The problem with Christianity is I don't think there is one piece of dogma that every single Christian group would agree on.
I believe in Jesus, yeah.
Not even that. I know people who identify as Christians who say they don't necessarily believe Jesus was a real person.
Yeah, but once you're going into... Right, when the name... This would be like saying I'm a communist, it's just I don't believe in communism. Or I'm a Muslim, I just don't believe in Allah. You know what I mean?
I know a Christian who says that he is a Christian, even though he says that he believes in Christianity, but he doesn't think any of it is true.
Well, we had a caller on the last show, not the one from Ireland, but the one before that, who was, when Together for Peace was on, one of the callers was raising this very point about people who call themselves Christians but don't actually believe in a God, which I think is odd. But I suppose you've got to define what a Christian is and what they believe. But when you try and do that, they get all upset and defensive and argumentative, and then call us being hostile and aggressive or strident.
Well, yeah, I think that's a big thing when you actually criticize religions. It's the most simple and generic criticism is you're just being hateful and intolerant.
And the one that's come up recently again, most recently in Nephilim Free's latest video. There's this. I'm actually curious to take your views on this. He says that all atheists hate God, and that's why we don't want to be responsible to him and everything. Does he genuinely believe that we think there is a God, but we just don't like the idea? I mean, is he really that fucked up?
No. Well, I've had this brought up to me many times throughout my life, and I try to explain to these people, and you can't. Because there's no logical reasoning that if I believed that God exists and the only thing that pisses God off really, really bad is me ignoring that he exists, then why would I ignore that he exists? Would that make him not exist anymore? I mean, the only thing that you cannot be forgiven for is blaspheming the Holy Ghost. So if I say that I don't think that he exists, I've just damned myself, and it's impossible to redeem myself from that, so why the hell would I do that if I thought such a thing existed? And here's why that makes sense to them. Because they think that if I believe hard enough that I can make God not exist and make my reality take over. But if they believe hard enough, they can make God exist and their reality will take over. Reality for them is entirely subjective.
There was a Christian program on the television this morning where someone was telling the story of a preacher who had lost his faith. And so his brilliant life-saving tactic was to go to the window every morning and say, "I believe in God." And he didn't feel anything. And he went the next day and said, "I believe in God." And this story went on and on until he forced himself to believe it. And I think that's a fantastic illustration of make-believe.
Well, there were many accounts of people who, struggle to believe but force themselves to. I mean, Mother Teresa was one of the most classic.
I mean, just a quick point on the religious offensiveness. I mean, why is it that so many so many who aren't Muslims find drawing Muhammad offensive, yet don't bat an eyelid at zombie Jesus? And then you sort of take it another... Yeah, and drawing Muhammad isn't?
Well, depends. Depends on the drawing.
Well, exactly. So you get a funny drawing of Muhammad and you get a funny drawing of Jesus. What's the difference? Why do people get so offended at one and not the other? And why do people... I think
zombie Jesus sort of connects to the story of Jesus being a zombie as well, so there's the sort of double
but that's just being deliberately offensive. You are trying to incite... Sure. You are just being hateful and intolerant of their religion.
Which reminds me, I'm in a full-length feature motion picture about a zombie Jesus.
You can't say that, Owen. You've got to expand on that.
The movie was made 2 years ago. It's supposed to come out sometime this summer, I think, but they keep postponing it. But yeah, it's called Zombie Christ.
And yeah, I think that ridicule is a perfectly fine way of highlighting the shortcomings of religion. And as the way that I see it is P.C. Myers, when he did this thing with desecrating the host. So what he did is he got his communion wafer, which he then tortured with I forget how he did it, a pen or something, stabbed it a few times with a pen, and then threw it in the garbage with the coffee grounds and banana peel. And this really got a load of Catholics pissed off. They were asking for him to be fired.
What was interesting, there's another story I heard a few months ago of someone who was taking communion and didn't actually eat the wafer and sort of like kept it in his hand and sat down on it back in the pew. And he was arrested by his fellow congregation because he hadn't eaten the wafer. I don't know what the arrest was for. I presume it was kidnapping.
There was actually something along those lines that they seriously wanted prosecutions for this. Now, I mean, for me, the way that I see this is there are a load of people who don't really have any great horse in this battle. And all they see is that people get really upset about this or people don't. And if people really get upset about it, then you shouldn't be doing it. Now, that's an incorrect assessment of the situation. The fact that Muslims get really angry when you draw Muhammad is an irrelevance in the same way that Catholics get really angry when you torture communion wafers, right? You do the same thing to the Amish, and no one cares. I mean, it's this thing that you actually pick on these sort of religious pussies, so to speak, the people who never get offended, and you can never be seen as getting involved in hate speech. Right? If you can't get a rise out of them, so to speak, it's obvious that they've got no real involvement in their religion, and so you can never be hateful against these people, so to speak.
If you ever hold anything sacred, you're easily offended.
One thing, just going back to the issue of taking a wafer, and obviously it has to be after the priest has said a few magic words, because until that happens, it's just a wafer. But if someone stole a wafer and was then therefore charged with kidnapping, because it is the body and blood of the body of Christ, then presumably anyone that takes communion could be prosecuted for cannibalism.
That's exactly what I was just thinking, DPR. And seeing as cannibalism is, as far as I know, illegal in Germany, does that mean that we could actually get the Catholic Church to either change its dogma or be prosecuted for cannibalism? That's a good one, DPR. I like that.
I don't see it happening. I just think...
No, that's because no one's done it. Christ, if you don't do these things, nothing will happen.
Well, hopefully we can invite someone to take a private prosecution against the Pope for encouraging and inciting cannibalism.
Has done more egregious crimes, personally.
But look, if you never challenge the dogma will never change. Right? If you never actually go out and draw Muhammad, that dogma will remain there in perpetuity. I mean, that dogma will be observed in perpetuity.
But you're forgetting, Thunderfoot, that the Pope is infallible.
Exactly. Right? So you take it to the man. Prosecute him for cannibalism.
So when he goes and tells all these people in Africa that condoms spread AIDS, then he has to be accurate in this, so he can't possibly be expected to recant a statement like that, right?
Oh, but they're very good at recanting and apologizing many years afterwards. For example, a quasi-apology to Galileo and apologies for all the atrocities that they have committed in the past. As long as sufficient time has passed and things have been forgotten, it does kind of make question whether the Pope really is infallible when they have to make these embarrassing apologies.
Well, he's got to be infallible. I mean, he dreamt up 7 additional deadly sins. I mean, you only have the 7 in the Bible, and now we have 14 thanks to him, because he was able to come up with some more. Because, God is absent-minded. He forgets to throw things in until thousands of years later.
What I love about one of the most extraordinary changes, which just happens by decree of the papacy, is it limbo or purgatory that
purgatory
just disappears overnight?
Yep.
No longer
I think they're going to convert it into condos and shopping malls now.
Joel, I'm going to move you on. Thank you very much indeed for the call.
All right, cheers. Bye.
But just before you move on, DVR, I mean, isn't this the whole sort of point, though, that we should, if we're going to focus on anything, we should focus on the dogmas that are easiest to ridicule.
Yeah,
whether it offends people or not is an irrelevance, as long as and what DPR suggests there, prosecuting find out whether a cannibalist laws.
Sorry, Zach, can you mute your microphone for a moment, please?
Yeah, and I have to throw in one more statement on the tail of what Thunder just said, because there was somebody in the blog that just mentioned that the Bible is not permitted to change, and I remember that there is a line in there that says, I can't remember how it's worded, but it says you cannot add to or subtract from the Word of God. And what the great irony is, of course, is that line is itself a posthumous addition. So, go ahead.
I was just going to go back to Thunder's point about causing offence. One of the things that I think caused me to think at Dublin is just on this issue, and whether you should be that bothered about causing offence, or whether you should positively ridicule these people. And I have to say that I am coming down more in favour of just ridiculing them, because that's what their beliefs deserve. And how can you be respectful to someone who cannot possibly justify what they believe, and for the most part cannot even explain what they believe? And then they get offended when you try and ask them, well, what is it exactly that what is it? What is the nature of this God that you believe in? And they can't answer, and you think you're basing your whole fucking life on this, and you've got no idea what you're talking about. How can you respect that? Yes, they are worthy of ridicule.
Well, don't forget, DPR, that you and I both have been involved in conversations where you have somebody that is confessing to believe this stuff, and when you ridicule them, they say that vindicates their faith, because the Bible says people are going to make fun of you. And this is how you're supposed to know that you're right, is because people make fun of you for it.
Yeah, and they actually find that argument persuasive. But I'm sorry, I just find it extraordinary that something that is held so dear to them and is so important and plays such a significant part in their life, they cannot even explain what it is they believe or justify why they believe it. How can you respect when you ask someone what do you believe, and they say, no, you're being offensive, you're being aggressive. Shove it.
That's the one that I liked when I was told that I was using totalizing statements.
If I may hop in here for a second, something that I'd like to point out that's kind of unique about this, about the whole, you're being persistent, you're being aggressive, you're being terrible. And this is a line that Sam Harris uses, although slightly differently, but it's if somebody believed that Elvis was still alive and you asked them why, and they gave you these reasons, I mean, it would be perfectly acceptable for you to say, well, what about the pictures? What about this? How can you still believe that? I mean, this is a stupid belief. Why would you, it's okay for you to grill them on an irrational belief in every other aspect of their lives except for when it comes to faith. So I just find that to be something worth pointing out.
I would add on that. No, it's more than that. It's only if people believe in it to the point of irrationality. That's the only time it actually becomes offensive. You can go and take the piss out of the Quakers as much as you want, and no one will actually care. You just do a little drawing of Muhammad, and all of a sudden you're being deliberately offensive. You're provoking them. And this was actually at you had Rebecca Watson at this convention. Yeah, it's up on Aaron's channel, suggesting that you are inviting religious violence by doing this. And I really don't see it. I mean,
Thunder,
there is never. It is never an appropriate response to say you offended my beliefs, therefore it's okay for me to burn down embassies and behead people.
Okay.
Yeah, but Thunder, can I just ask this question? We've got Terry Jones, the pastor somewhere in Florida, isn't he? Who's got a congregation that could fit into a small bus, burning the Quran. And there is a knock-on effect. It does have consequences. Should he be able to sleep comfortably at night knowing that his actions directly cause or indirectly cause the death of 14 people in Afghanistan?
Oh, come on, DPR. This is right. You know, if a girl wears a short skirt, does she invite being raped? I mean, how can she actually sleep at night knowing that she invited people to rape her? Right? It is never an appropriate response to say, you offended my beliefs, therefore it's okay to go and behead people. It is not his fault. He did not. There is no rational reason by which they can go from you offended our religion to it's okay to behead people. And Jones is certainly not responsible for it.
Now, when we're talking about the prayer-a-thon in Houston in August, that's being held by the American Family Association, and the president of that organization has said that Muslims should convert to Christianity or face U.S. military wrath. How's that a breach of church and state? How's that for an offensive statement? Convert to Christianity or face U.S. military wrath. This is the kind of psychosis that is in bed with our government.
Welcome to the show, Majestical.
Hello.
Hi, how can we help you?
I wanted to talk about how the Christians like to say, or how the Christians like to put forth their connection with God. I was a Christian until I was 12 years old. And I was baptized and everything, and I never felt that connection that they supposedly have with God. There was nothing there for me personally, and how can they say that they have this special connection when there are so many different types of Christianity? How can they know that they're the ones that have the true connection when others don't have any at all, like I didn't?
Well, I think in short form they can't and they don't. But Aaron, do you want to take this first?
Well, it is a matter of pretend, and it's entirely subjective. When you talk to people of any religious background, theirs is always the one true church. If it's called a church, it could also be called a synagogue or a mosque or a temple. It doesn't matter what religion it is, theirs is the truth. Some exceptions, some Eastern religions think things through a little differently than Western Abrahamic religion does. But I have met extremists even for, Hinduism and Buddhism and things of that sort. It's entirely subjective. Faith is a matter of pretend. It really is. And it's a matter of forced belief, as we mentioned before. There are some people who believe what they do simply because everybody else did, and they've never questioned it. Maybe it's not a subject of interest for them. But those who have found themselves in the fray, like in discussions of this type, where they're faced with facts and have to decide which is more important to them, accuracy and accountability or their belief, sometimes they will quite consciously decide that they would rather believe than know better.
Well, you see, whenever I was little, again, I was a Christian, I tried my hardest to make my family proud and be the best Christian I could be. I tried so hard to keep Jesus in my heart. You would not believe the nights that I would just sit up thinking, why can't I do this? It was terrible for me. And finally, when I was 12, I was like, I'm going to give myself something terrible if I keep trying to do this. I need to accept that I am not one of them. I'm different. I can't feel anything for this because I know it's complete crap.
At that age, I imagine that it was quite a painful experience, and you must have felt very uncomfortable, because presumably you were surrounded by family and friends who were Christians.
Been able to admit to my dad's side of the family and my mom that I am not a Christian. I still have not told the rest of my family.
What was the reaction to that?
My mom, surprisingly, was not angry with me. We were riding in the car to my grandmother's, and we just had a very, very long conversation. And she used a very interesting hypothetical on me.
What's that?
It was basically, she said, if we get into a car wreck, a terrible, terrible car wreck, and you get
Has anyone else lost the audio?
Yeah,
I've got nothing.
That's a real shame. I was very interested in that. We've lost the audio.
Yeah.
I've got a message saying there's a problem with the call. I'm just going to wait a while and see if we can get the caller back in, because I was already quite interested in that.
Looks like she's syncing up again.
Yeah. I've got a few. Yeah, she's just come back online. I think that she's just dropped, so we'll give it a few moments and let her come back. I've got a few people lined up, and James Sitwell, I will come to you presently. I know you were supposed to actually be a panelist on the show, but I'll explain why we couldn't do that in a moment. Now, is Majestical back with us? Not yet. I mean, this is what really frustrates me. And when people say, "Oh, teaching religion to children is not harmful. It's not indoctrination. It's a good thing." I'm sorry, you hear this type of account time and time again of these people who are going through really difficult times and mental torture, having to offload this idiocy that they've been indoctrinated with from a young age. It really does make me angry.
Well, I've got another point on that too. When people talk about the pros versus the cons of teaching religion to these kids, so far as I can see, when you have a con, when there's a negative aspect of religion, it's a very tangible, measurable thing. You can show the damage and show conclusively where it came from. But the benefits of religion are not so measurable. I mean, you can't distinguish them from somebody that was going to turn out fine anyway. There's nothing that we can attribute to the belief itself that if somebody lives a good and decent life, we can't say that it was the religion that did that for them.
I think we have Majestical back. Are you with us again?
Yes, I'm very sorry about that.
That's not a problem. I think you got up to the point where you were explaining the conversation with your mother in the car.
Where we lost you was where you said if there was a terrible car wreck.
Well, okay. And I am mortally wounded in this hypothetical car wreck, and she is perfectly fine. And we are both taken to the hospital for precautionary reasons, and they are having me on life support. I am in critical condition for some amount of time. She never specified. And she is released about an hour after she gets in because they find that she is perfectly okay. And then a few days later, after everyone has come to my hospital bed and they have been praying for me and, all this, that, and the other, she up and dies for no reason. And I live.
And I'm sorry, and she was trying to infer from this story what?
She was saying that the prayer helped me, but since no one prayed for her, she died.
Yeah. I'm sorry, this is sort of the thing that I referred to in one of my recent videos about the disconnect the religious have from reason and their ability to look at what they perceive to be evidence and interpret it in a way which is totally cack-handed, and they would not interpret similar evidence in any other area of their life, save for religion. It's a nonsense. Tests are being done on this sort of prayer issue and have always shown it to be totally useless.
I think it's confirmational bias.
I'll give you another example. I thought you were going to go to the near-death experience and sort of like, people who've had this out-of-body experience when they're on hospital beds. That may well be the case, but to infer from that there is an afterlife and there is a God is an absolute nonsense and a totally unreasonable inference to draw from that experience. So, sorry, Thunder, do go on.
This rock here prevents earthquakes. And the reason I can tell you it prevents earthquakes is because whilst I've been holding this rock, there have been no earthquakes. And I can do it again, and there's still no earthquakes. And again, and still no earthquakes. And if there is an earthquake, well, okay, so sometimes this rock is obviously sentient and will allow earthquakes. Right? It's confirmational bias.
Now, if you want a more consistently valid religion, you can check out Pharyngula today, wherein Odin has promised that there would, Jesus promised there would be no bad people. Odin promised there would be no frost giants. I don't see any frost giants.
All praise to Odin.
Or there are to going back to the offending religions thing very, very briefly, there is one image board which is Thor, gods. Mine carries a hammer, yours got nailed to a cross. Questions. Right? And similarly, there is another one, I think it might be Thor again. Gods. Mine kills giants with a big-ass hammer, yours fucked an 8-year-old girl. Questions.
Family show.
But the thing, Thunder, about this is that they've always got the excuse, well, it was God's will that Jesus would be crucified. It was all pre-planned. This is the whole thing about, how ridiculous the story is if you examine it. He comes to Earth in a sort of form of himself, who's part God and part God knows how. Well, and then kills himself. And the people think it's absolutely wonderful. He knew damn well that he'd get better in 3 days' time and go to heaven. That's hardly a fucking sacrifice.
Yeah.
It doesn't even compare to what Prometheus went through.
Yeah. Now there was a guy who knew how to atone for his sin of stealing fire from the gods.
Tell us about Prometheus, Aaron.
He was crucified for 10,000 years.
And there was something crazy, like every day he had to eat his own liver or something.
Every day.
A bird came and ate his liver.
Yeah, and it's because of, revealing forbidden knowledge to the humans that, the gods didn't want them to be like the gods. So once they knew right from wrong, once they opened Pandora's box, once they knew how to make fire, whatever the story is, they're all the same concept.
Majestical, may I ask, and don't answer if you feel uncomfortable, whereabouts are you from?
I'm actually in Kentucky.
And is Kentucky a particularly religious state?
Creation Museum country.
Is it?
Don't remind me about that.
Have you been to the Creation Museum?
No. Oh my God, no.
PC Myers was talking about it in Dublin when in the question and answers session after his speech, and he said when they visited, they had to sign a contract which included, amongst other things, a prohibition on having gay sex on any of the exhibits.
All right, you know what? Me and about 10 chicks, let's go do it.
Wait. Oh, I got a video camera somewhere. Oh.
Now I like your thinking. I mean, this is how you raise the awareness of this sort of thing. I mean, sitting out there with the banners saying, teaching this stuff to our kids, it's boring. You get some hot chicks to have gay sex on that dinosaur, you've got a story.
But the odd thing is, Thunder, as PZ said, it didn't prohibit straight sex. So you can have straight sex on the dinosaur, but you just can't have gay sex.
How about porn star sex? Does that count?
I don't know what porn star sex is. Do tell us.
Well,
masturbation is forbidden, isn't it? Okay.
Looks like that dinosaur is going to have fun.
Was there anything else majestical? I've got
actually, I'm just curious. Does sex on a dinosaur count as bestiality, given that the dinosaur is now extinct and plastic?
No.
Inquiring minds want to know. So that's no from Majestic. What do you think, DPR? Does that count as a three-way?
I don't see how an inanimate object can be considered to be bestiality. I think in order to constitute bestiality, the dinosaur would have to be...
what if it's a fossil dinosaur? Does that count as necrophilia?
Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
Necrophilia bestiality at the Creation Museum.
Okay, well, the quality of this show's going down the toilet. Family show, boys.
Sorry, guys.
Majestical, thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm going to move on, but thanks for your contribution. And the next person will go straight on to, if I can remember who it is, Peaceful Atheist. I mean, that's just a total contradiction, isn't it? How can you be peaceful and an atheist? Because we're all riddled with hate and violence and a desire to kill and murder. Hello, Peaceful. Are you with us? You seem to be in the call. Have you muted your microphone?
Yeah.
Ah, there we go. Welcome to the show. What would you like to raise?
I read in the Quran, there nowhere says that you're not allowed to draw Muhammad, but why are Muslims still upset about that?
It was an isolated cultural issue. There's a lot of traditions in Christianity that aren't actually outlined in the Bible either, but are popularly believed anyway. And that's kind of
communion wafers would be a prime example. There's nothing in the Bible about communion wafers, or you do your magical incantation over the wafers, and they become the blood and body of Christ that can be then abducted and treated as abduction. But this is the thing with religious dogma: is it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, it wouldn't be dogma.
You see, you have lines in the Bible like, popular belief is that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was actually Satan in disguise. If you look at the medieval artwork, you'll find out that Satan, or not Satan, but the serpent, rather, is always represented with breasts, or is represented as a naga. So that prior to King James, it's clear that the serpent was, whenever it had a human manifestation at all, it was female and clearly not Satan. Now, at one point, according to Talmudic legend, the serpent was supposed to have been Lilith in disguise. Now, Talmudic legend means that it's not actually expressly spelled out in the Talmud either, and neither is the identity of the serpent spelled out in Revelations 9, where it just simply mentions, Lucifer is, or Satan is that old serpent, but never specifies that it was supposed to be the same serpent as the one in the garden. Jesus refers to the Pharisees as a group of vipers, but doesn't mean that any of them were in the Garden of Eden either. So the serpent in the garden wasn't a Pharisee. So where do you get the idea that the serpent in the garden was Satan? The Bible does not say that. This is where you read between the lines and ignore the lines.